War has always been defined by one simple rule. The side with the greater power decides the outcome. More soldiers, more firepower, more technology. But there's a darker, hidden rule that only a few civilizations in history have ever truly mastered. If you cannot defeat a superior enemy, you make their superiority irrelevant. Imagine facing an opponent who controls the sky, owns the airwaves, sees in the dark, and can wipe out an entire village with a single bombardment. How do you fight that? Conventional logic says, build taller walls, stronger bunkers, heavier armor. But throughout history, walls have crumbled, cities have burned, entire kingdoms vanished. So what is the real answer? It isn't to fight harder, it's to disappear. To remove yourself from the enemy's field of vision, from their calculations, and from the physical battlefield altogether. This is the story of the most brilliant, most extreme, and most mind-bending engineering ideas ever created in human conflict. Not temples, not skyscrapers, not pyramids, but underground superstructures, living machines built into the earth itself. Structures designed not only for survival, but to flip the rules of war upside down. These places didn't just protect people, they rewrote history by engineering a world that the enemy could never reach. To understand the genius of underground warfare, we travel back not decades, but millennia. Cappadocia, Turkey. A landscape of volcanic rock, soft enough to carve, but strong enough to endure. Here, under the feet of ancient invaders, lies a secret that should not have existed. Derinkuyu, a multi-level underground metropolis. Not a cave, not a shelter, but an 8-story city hidden deep beneath the earth, connected by tunnels stretching for miles, capable of housing 20,000 people, their livestock, their food supply, and their entire way of life. But the sheer size is not what makes Derinkuyu an anomaly. It's the engineering intelligence behind it. Ventilation shafts that deliver clean air to the very lowest levels, so efficient that modern engineers are still confused how such airflow was achieved without modern tools. Wells carved into solid rock that do not reach the surface, protecting water supplies from poisoning. Strategic dead-end tunnels that confuse invaders. Sound traps that silence footsteps. Narrow choke points that limit enemy movement. And then there are the doors. Enormous circular stone slabs weighing hundreds of kilograms, perfectly balanced to roll into place with a single push from the inside. Once shut, they became immovable fortresses, weapons of pure geometry. Derinkuyu wasn't a hiding place. It was a dimensional shift, a civilization choosing to exist in a world the enemy literally could not reach. This was the first known instance of a society defeating overwhelming power not with resistance, but with disappearance. Thousands of years later, the world saw the rebirth of this ancient logic, but this time, weaponized. Vietnam, a war fought with machines, air power, satellites, and sensors. A war defined by overwhelming superiority on one side. And yet, the superior force could not win, because their firepower did not apply underground. The Chi tunnel network was more than a shelter. It was a complete underground ecosystem, engineered with surgical precision to counter modern warfare. Over 250 kilometers of tunnels formed a labyrinth beneath the jungle, some just inches high, some wide enough for entire units. 3 layers deep, multiple redundant entrances, trapdoors invisible even at arm's length. This was asymmetric warfare built into the earth. Airstrikes? The tunnels were too deep. Tanks? Stopped by hidden pits and mines. Toxic gas attacks? countered by airtight seals and clever airflow control. But the most brilliant invention was not a tunnel. It was a kitchen, the Huang Kum stove, a masterpiece of physics, a design that cooled smoke, split it into multiple channels, and released it along the forest floor as a thin mist indistinguishable from dawn fog. It turned visibility into invisibility. Ku Chi wasn't underground survival. It was underground dominance, a tactical glitch in the logic of modern war. Fighters could appear out of nowhere, strike, and disappear back into a dimension that technology couldn't track. For the enemy, Ku Chi was not a battlefield. It was a psychological anomaly, a place where the rules of war simply didn't apply. If Ku Chi was the underground sword, Vịnh Mốc tunnel was the shield, the DMZ, the 17th parallel, one of the most heavily bombed regions in human history. Entire landscapes were flattened, villages erased, farmland vaporized. The goal was straightforward: destroy the people and resistance collapses. But the people did not die. They went underground. Vịnh Mốc became the underground village that refused to die. A fully functioning settlement with family rooms, wells, maternity wards, meeting halls, and air shafts disguised as natural rocks. The tunnels were carved through hard basalt stone, reshaped into domed ceilings that redistributed shockwaves from continuous bombing. It wasn't a hiding place. It was a message. If you remove the target, the weapon becomes useless. Vịnh Mốc preserved community, morale, and logistics right beneath the front line. It was the reason the Northern Front never broke. Every war relies on logistics: food, medicine, ammunition, communication. And in Vietnam, that lifeline was the Trường Sơn system. Bombed endlessly, blocked repeatedly, targeted day and night. But it never collapsed. Because the true supply route wasn't the visible path. It was the invisible one beneath it. Underground storage depots, hidden medical clinics, tunnels carved into mountain slopes, engineers sheltering in subterranean chambers until the bombers left, then resurfacing within hours to repair the route. This wasn't a road. It was an underground nervous system, a self-healing infrastructure, a redundant network that ensured supply continuity regardless of how many times the enemy struck. So what connects Derinkuyu, Ku Chi, Vịnh Mốc, and Trường Sơn? It isn't the tunnels, it isn't the engineering, it isn't even the survival. It's the philosophy, the rule that only emerges when civilizations are pushed to the edge of extinction. When you cannot defeat overwhelming force, you erase the variables that make force relevant. You don't fight explosives, you remove yourself from their blast radius. You don't counter superior vision, you operate in a dimension beneath visibility. You don't outgun the enemy, you outthink them. These underground systems weren't built out of weakness. They were built out of clarity, discipline, and an understanding of war so advanced that most modern militaries still struggle to counter it. They inverted the rules. Presence became absence. Weakness became invulnerability. Survival became strategy. Because in every era, past, present, and future, you cannot destroy what you cannot find.